It was a siege so brutal that the numbers still shock historians. Tens of thousands trapped behind walls, cut off from food and hope. A defense so stubborn that it stopped an army more than 20 times its size. And yet survival came at a cost so horrifying, including organized cannibalism, that even centuries later it divides opinion. Was it loyalty, desperation, or madness? Inside those walls, the rules of life and death were rewritten. Hunger stripped away the familiar order of society, and the unthinkable became routine. What happened there was not just a battle, it was a slow descent into a nightmare that no one could have imagined at the start. Welcome to the story of the city that ate itself. Today we are talking about the siege of Suiyang, history's most horrifying siege. In the middle of the 8th century, the Tang Dynasty was one of the most powerful states in the world. It ruled over a vast and diverse empire that stretched far across East and Central Asia. The Tang court in the capital of Chang'an was the center of culture, trade, and politics. The Silk Road brought goods and ideas from distant lands, and the empire was home to many different peoples and religions. There were Chinese, Turks, Sogdians, Koreans, Persians, and others living under Tang rule. Confucianism shaped government, but Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism, and Islam also had followers inside the empire. The Tang government was well organized with a system of provinces and officials chosen through the imperial examination. Its army was large and experienced, guarding the empire's borders and keeping control over its territory. During the Tang dynasty's golden age, the population was around 80 million. Agriculture and trade were strong, and the empire's influence reached deep into Central Asia, parts of the Korean peninsula, and Southeast Asia. To keep the empire safe and stable, the Tang relied on powerful military governors called judushi, who commanded regional armies. These governors were supposed to serve the emperor, but their control over troops and local resources made them independent in practice. One of these governors was An Lushan. An Lushan was of mixed heritage, partially Sogdian and partially Turkic. He rose to prominence as a frontier general, gaining the trust of Emperor Xuanzong and becoming one of the most influential leaders in the north. The emperor gave him command over several key regions and allowed him to control a large army. An Lushan was known at court and had close ties to high-ranking officials, including the emperor's favorite consort, Yongqiu. However, despite his position, tensions grew between him and central government. In 755, these tensions broke into open revolt. An Lushan accused the imperial court of corruption and claimed that he wanted to remove bad advisors from power. He used this as a pretext to march his army south from his base in Fanyang, with the aim of seizing control of the empire. This was the start of the An Lushan Rebellion, one of the deadliest conflicts in history. The rebellion spread quickly. An Lushan's forces moved fast, defeating imperial troops and capturing important cities. In early 756, they took Luoyang, the eastern capital of the Tang dynasty. This was a major loss for the imperial government, both strategically and symbolically. Emperor Xuanzong ordered more troops to resist the rebels, but the Tang armies were suffering from disorganization and low morale. Many generals defected to An Lushan's side, thinking the rebellion might succeed. Others retreated without fighting. The rebel army pushed towards Chang'an, the main Tang capital, and by the summer of 756, it stood almost at the gates. The emperor faced a crisis. His forces could not guarantee the defense of the city. In July 756, Xuanzong decided to flee to the southwest, towards Sichuan, to escape capture and try to rebuild his power. The retreat was chaotic. On the journey, internal conflicts broke out among the emperor's own guards and advisors. In one incident, Yang Guifei, who was later recognized as one of China's 4 great beauties, saw her powerful cousin, Yang Guozhong, and other relatives killed during the rebellion. At Mawei Station, mutinous troops then forced the emperor to order her execution to appease them. This political and personal disaster shook Xuanzong deeply. Once in Sichuan, he abdicated the throne in favor of his son, who became Emperor Suzong. The Tang dynasty still existed, but its authority was badly weakened. Meanwhile, the rebel forces under An Lushan controlled both Luoyang and Chang'an, giving them 2 of the most important cities in the empire. However, the war was far from over. The Tang still held strong positions in the south, and these regions were vital for food production and supplies. The Yangtze River Basin was the main agricultural heartland of the empire, and whoever controlled it could feed large armies and finance the war. For the rebels to fully defeat the Tang, they needed to push south and take control of the supply routes. That meant advancing through the provinces of central China. On this path lay the city of Suiyang. Suiyang was no means the largest or most famous city in the Tang dynasty, but it had a strategic location. It sat on the Grand Canal route between Kaifeng and Shuzhou, making it a key link between the north and the fertile lands of the southeast. If the rebels captured Suiyang, they would open the way toward the rich farmlands and cities beyond the Yangtze River. For the Tang, it was a dangerous prospect. If Suiyang fell, the rebels would have a direct path to the resources that could keep their army strong. Holding Suiyang became critical to protecting the south and buying time for the Tang to regroup. This set the stage for one of the most brutal and desperate sieges in Chinese history. Zhang Xun was a Tang dynasty official who became famous for his loyalty to the emperor and his skill in battle. He was not born into the military. In his early career, he served as a bureaucrat and passed the imperial examinations, which marked him as an educated and capable man. His loyalty to the Tang court was unquestionable, and he was known for enforcing strict discipline wherever he served. This made him respected by some and feared by others. When the An Lushan rebellion broke out in 755, many Tang commanders either surrendered to the rebels or tried to protect their own regions. Zhang Xun did the opposite. He chose to resist the rebels, even when his superiors ordered him to welcome them. He gathered a small force of loyal soldiers and took control of the city of Yongqiu, a strategically important location in Henan province. The rebels quickly realized that Yongqiu blocked their movement south. An Lushan sent a large army to take the city, far outnumbering Zhang's defenders. Historical accounts say that the rebel force was at least 7 times larger than the garrison inside the city wall. Yet Zhang refused to surrender. He organized the defense carefully and used creative tactics to make up for his smaller numbers. One of his best-known tricks during the siege of Yongqiu was the use of war drums at night. His men would beat the drums as if preparing for an attack, forcing the rebel army to wake up, put on armor, and get into battle positions. But the attack never came. This happened night after night, wearing down the rebels' energy and patience. Eventually they stopped responding to the drums. That was when Zhang struck. He sent cavalry units out of the gates to attack the sleeping and unarmored rebels in their camp. This surprise attack caused heavy losses and boosted the morale of the defenders. These successes at Yongqiu showed that Zhang Xun could hold off a much larger force by employing clever strategies. His determination and skill earned him a reputation as a man who could defend a city to the very last breath. Soon his fame reached the Tang High Command, and it would shape the events to come. In early 757, the rebels prepared to advance on Suiyang, another critical city in Henan. The administrator of Suiyang, Xu Yan, was responsible for civilian matters, but lacked Zhang's military experience. Knowing that the city would be a key target, Zhang led his troops from Yongqiu to join the defense. Once there, he took over the military command, while Xu Yan continued to manage administration and supplies. Zhao also coordinated with Yao Kun, the magistrate of a nearby county, who brought additional forces. The defenders were a mix of small garrisons and volunteer fighters. Together they numbered about 6,800 men. Facing them was a rebel army of around 130,000 soldiers, led by experienced generals. The difference in numbers was overwhelming, yet Zhang Xun was determined to stand his ground, knowing that if Suiyang fell, the rebels would have a clear route to the rich farmlands of the south. Zhang Xun knew that he would have to use every skill and trick he knew to keep the enemy at bay. From the very first days, Zhang Xun focused on breaking the enemy's rhythm and morale. For this he used a tactic proven in the earlier siege of Yongqiu, beating the war drums every night. Again his soldiers would beat them loudly, making it sound as if an attack was about to come. This forced the Yan soldiers to wake from sleep, arm themselves, and stand ready in the dark night after night. The attacks never came, and the cycle repeated. Over time, the rebels grew tired and careless. Eventually they stopped putting on armor when the drums began, deciding it was a waste of effort. Zhang was waiting for this moment. One night he ordered several units of cavalry to charge out of the city gates and strike the enemy camp while they slept. The raid caused chaos, and about 5,000 Yan soldiers were killed before they could organize a defense. But Zhang's creativity did not stop there. He understood that damaging the enemy's leadership could be even more effective than killing large numbers of ordinary soldiers. However, there was a problem. He did not know exactly where the Yan commander, Yongqiu, was positioned. To solve this, Zhang ordered his archers to fire stalks of grass instead of arrows at selected enemy troops. When these soldiers realized they had not been injured, they ran to report to their commander that the defenders must have run out of arrows. By following them, Zhang's scouts identified Yongqiu's location. Zhang then ordered his best archer, Nan Ji-yun, to take the shot. The arrows struck Yin in the eye, wounding him severely and sending panic through the Yan ranks. For a moment, it looked as though the siege might fail entirely. After just 16 days of fighting, the rebels had lost around 20,000 men, including many in leadership positions. Yongqiu himself was badly hurt. Unable to keep his forces steady, he decided to retreat and regroup. In most wars, such a withdrawal would have meant the end of the siege. The defenders could have repaired their defenses, restocked supplies, and prepared for any future threat. But Suiyang would not get that chance. While the city had been holding out, the regional civil governor made a decision that would have terrible consequences. Believing that other towns might be attacked next, he ordered that Suiyi's stored grain be shared with nearby strongholds. That left Zhang's garrison with far less food than it needed to recover from the first siege. Only a few months after withdrawing, the Yan army returned. By the summer of 757, Yongqiu was back at Suiyang with fresh troops and siege equipment. This time the attack would not be short. The rebels surrounded the city completely, cutting off all routes for supplies or reinforcements. The defenders could not expect relief from outside unless someone broke through the lines. As the weeks turned into months, the food situation in the city worsened. At first, rations of rice were reduced to small portions. Soon there was so little left that soldiers had to search for anything edible. They caught insects, hunted stray animals, dug up roots, and even chewed on paper to ease their hunger. Knowing they could not survive much longer without help, Zhang ordered Nan Ji-yun to lead 30 men in a breakout attempt. The mission was dangerous, but Nan managed to escape the city and travel to nearby garrisons. However, many local commanders refused to help. Some feared losing their own cities to the rebels. Others, like Helan Jiming, disliked Zhang and wanted to see him fail. Nan's pleas were turned down again and again. One official, Lian Huan, was moved by Nan's persistence and agreed to send 3,000 soldiers to help. Fighting through the rebel lines was costly, and by the time they reached Suiyang, only around 1,000 had survived the journey. Although this doubled the number of defenders in the city, it also meant there were many more mouths to feed. The food shortage became even more severe, and morale among the soldiers fell sharply. Some argued that surrender was the only realistic choice. They believed that holding out any longer would simply mean dying of hunger inside the walls. Zhang Xun refused. He told his officers and men that every extra day they held the city would give the Tang Dynasty more time to strengthen their defenses further south. For him, surrender was not an option, no matter the cost. By late summer 757, the defenders of Suiyang had reached the point where hunger was a constant reality. The city's small remaining stock of food had been gone for weeks. Soldiers and civilians alike searched for anything that could be swallowed. At first, they boiled tea leaves or chewed on scraps of paper to trick their bodies into feeling full. Dogs, horses, and any other animals that could be caught were eaten. Even insects became a source of precious protein, but soon there was nothing left to find. That was when the siege entered its most horrifying stage. People began to speak of using human flesh as food. At first it was whispered, then quietly carried out in secret. Eventually it became impossible to ignore. Zhang Xun, faced with starving troops and no hope of immediate relief, decided to make a public statement that would force everyone to understand the level of sacrifice he expected. He brought his own concubine before the assembled soldiers. In full view of his officers, he killed her, had her body prepared, and ordered the troops to eat. Zhang told them that while he could not cut his own flesh to feed them, he would not spare the life of someone close to him if it meant keeping the army alive. Many soldiers were shocked and resisted at first, some even crying openly, but Zhang insisted, framing it as an example of loyalty to the Tang Emperor and the survival of their cause. After this, the act of eating human flesh moved from being a desperate secret to an organized, if deeply disturbing system. A hierarchy was formed to determine who would be killed next. Women were taken first, starting with those without family to protect them. Next were the elderly and the very young. Children and old men followed. Fighting-age men were kept for last, since they were still needed on the walls to resist the Yan attacks. Historical records from the Old and New Book of Tang, as well as other chronicles, describe the scale as staggering. Some sources claim that around half the city's pre-siege population, possibly 30,000 people, were eaten. Others, particularly later accounts, raise the number as high as 50,000. While exact figures are debated, there is agreement that Suiyang became one of the largest recorded cases of human cannibalism in human history. It was not random violence, but a grim logistical decision made under military command to prolong the city's resistance. The effect on the people inside the walls was devastating. The constant hunger weakened everyone. Diseases spread easily among the malnourished population. The mental strain was equally severe. Soldiers who had once proudly stood on the walls now avoided each other's eyes, haunted by what they had done or what they feared might soon happen to them. Despite the physical collapse and deep psychological trauma, the defenders kept fighting. Yan assaults were still met with arrows, stones, and boiling oil, even as the men launching them could barely stand. The siege dragged on month after month. By November, Suiyang's defenders were little more than shadows of themselves, but the city still stood. Zhang Xun's refusal to surrender meant that, for all the horror within the walls, the rebels still had not broken through. Fast forward to 24th of November 757. After months of siege, famine, and unimaginable hardship, Suiyang could no longer hold out. Inside the walls, only around 400 soldiers were still alive, and they were too weak to draw a bow or lift a spear. Many could barely stand. The once defiant garrison was now exhausted beyond recovery. When the Yan army finally broke through, Zhang Xun and his closest officials faced a choice: surrender and hope for mercy, or refuse and meet certain death. Zhang did not hesitate. Alongside men like Nan Jiyun and Xu Yuan and other loyal commanders, he rejected the idea of surrender. For them, giving themselves to the rebels was unthinkable after all they had endured for the Tang dynasty. The Yan commanders tried to persuade them, praising their skill and bravery, and even offered them positions if they changed sides. Every offer was refused. With no chance of changing their minds, the rebels executed Shan Xun, Nan Jiyun, and Xu Yan, and over 30 of their most loyal soldiers. These were the men who had held the city for nearly a year against overwhelming odds. Their deaths marked the final act of Suiyang's defense. Then came a bitter twist of fate. Just 3 days after the city fell, Tang reinforcements finally arrived. A relief force had been on its way, but delays, distance, and poor coordination meant they reached Suiyang too late. What could have been a rescue instead became a grim visit to a city in ruin, its defenders dead and its people gone. Although the Yan rebels had taken Suiyang, the victory came at an enormous cost. Historians estimate they lost over 120,000 men during the prolonged siege, a staggering number for any medieval army. The months spent trying to capture the city had drained their strength and slowed their advance. They never managed to push deep into the southern provinces as quickly as planned. The stubborn defense of Suiyang, for all its horror, had bought the Tang dynasty precious time to regroup and prepare new defenses further south. In the years that followed, Zhang Xun became one of the most controversial figures in Chinese history. On one hand, he was celebrated as a symbol of loyalty, courage, and unshakable commitment to the emperor. Temples were built in his honor, and poets and historians praised his military genius. On the other hand, he was condemned for the organized cannibalism that took place under his command. For some, no level of loyalty could justify such acts, no matter the circumstances. So what do you think? Was Zhang Xun a hero who sacrificed everything for his country, or a ruthless commander who crossed the line beyond redemption? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more unbelievable stories from history that you won't hear in your school textbook.